Welcome everyone to the Town of Greater Napanee special session of council for the 26th of October 2023. Just before we get started, I want to remind everybody that tonight's meeting is being recorded and live streamed to the town's YouTube channel. Having said that, we'll call the meeting to order. Look for a motion for the adoption of the agenda as presented, moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Council Martin. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed, motion's carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Seeing none. Items for discussion. The overview of the meeting format. Now there is the overview of the meeting format was published in our agenda, and I know that we've all had an opportunity to read it and see it, and the people at home as well have had an opportunity to see it. So if there's any questions to that, we can deal with that later. But we're going to jump right in for the items of discussion. The presentation of the Waste Diversion Committee recommendations. And I believe Christy is going to do that for us. So come on up, Christy, and the floor will be yours.
Okay, so I'm here tonight representing the Waste Diversion Committee. So we have some recommendations to council for consideration for the 2024 budget and kind of some longer term recommendations for consideration. What we're looking for tonight is obviously just to present our findings and our recommendations and to kind of gauge interest in what we should be considering or implementing into the 2024 operating budget as we're moving forward with that. So I will just note that I'm here tonight kind of in two hats, but I am as the Waste Diversion Committee, so I can give high level numbers, but if we want to get into the very detailed numbers, that might be more of an operating budget discussion. So our committee was formed in early 2022, and we currently have 8 members with various backgrounds related to, some have backgrounds in different areas of waste, some work for the municipality. We have a councillor on as part of our committee, and everyone just basically has the ultimate goal of waste diversion. So I think we're a pretty well-rounded team. And then our ultimate goal, or the ultimate goal of the committee, is to improve waste diversion in Greater Napanee and to make recommendations to you to improve our efficiencies. So the province has targets for municipalities to achieve over the next several years. The first one was in 2020, wanting municipalities to reach a 30% diversion rate. So currently, Greater Napanee is at 32.5%. So we met that target for 2020, but the next target is a 50% diversion rate by 2030. And we've got some work to do to achieve those goals by 2030. And then further down, they're looking for an 80% diversion rate by 2050. And I guess I should note that the provincial average is 49.1%. So we are below the average. Things have changed for based on diversion, I guess, for Greater Napanee over the next several years, or the previous years. We were much higher in 2017, and we've kind of seen a bit of a decline moving forward. So we've got some work to do, but I think we've met that first goal, and I think we can move forward meeting the future goals. So for the committee, we kind of broke waste in general into 5 different areas. So we looked at our waste disposal sites, curbside collection, leaf, brush, and Christmas tree disposal, household hazardous waste, and then waste alternatives. So those are things like, things we should be looking at in the future, or other ways that we're not currently involved. Bear with me here. So currently, as a municipality, like I said, I think we're doing some really great things in terms of waste diversion. We have the curbside collection of recyclables. We have curbside bag limits. So residential properties can only put out 3 bags of garbage a week. We're limiting what people can dispose of. We have an annual household hazardous waste event. We have leaf and brush collection, Christmas tree collection, and disposal options on top of that, where people can get rid of things. We have textile recycling, electronic waste recycling, and we run a partial pay-as-you-throw garbage collection system. And then some of the successes to date for the committee that we've kind of implemented or assisted in implementing are working through our communications team to improve information sharing regarding waste diversion. We've done some community service surveys to aid in forming our recommendations, and we've implemented the 2 community giveaway days per year. So I just thought, I mean, many of us probably already know about where we're at and the waste disposal sites and curbside collection, but I thought we should give an overview for those who maybe aren't aware. The Greater Napanee has 2 waste disposal sites. The first one we'll mention is the Roblin Waste Disposal Site. It's located at 232 Roblin Road. It is a closed and capped landfill, so it operates only as a transfer station, meaning any waste that goes in is then transferred out for disposal off-site. It's only open 1 day a week, and residents can dispose of various items there, household and bulky garbage, blue box, gray box, leaf and brush, scrap metal, electronic waste, and that sort of thing. Based on the data that comes in daily, or when the site's in operation once a week, our trends show that the largest or the most common material that is accepted at the site is garbage. So that could be household garbage or bulky waste. But it seems that people aren't using the sites for as many of the other things. And that site is currently operating at a loss. So you can see the numbers there. You know, they're quite significant. And then our South Fredericksburg waste site, it's located obviously in the south of town on Road 1. It is open Saturdays also from 8 to 3 every Saturday. And then in July and August only, it's open on Wednesdays. So 4 hours on Wednesday afternoons. So there is an active landfill there. That is our only active landfill. We accept bulky waste only in that. So any household bagged garbage does not go in there. And the reason for that is we really want to prolong the life of that landfill. You know, it's our only one, and putting those protrusible waste could affect the future of that site, and could end in us having to close the site early or something. So we do operate as a transfer station as well. So any recyclables, household garbage, scrap metal, textiles, that sort of thing goes in, is there temporarily, and then transferred off-site for final disposal. As you can see there, it's kind of a bit of a mixed bag in what's accepted at that site. It seems though the majority of the users using that site are either for leaf and brush or large bulky items that need to go into that landfill. The site generally does bring in a bit of revenue for the town. It really does fluctuate. And I guess I should have pointed out on the on the Roblin side, the Roblin slide, the 2020 seemed to be a bit of an outlier for both sites. So I don't know that you want to use that one as any kind of reference point, but that was when we allowed, you know, during COVID, we allowed some changes in user fees and such. So we did operate at a loss that year, but for the most part, that site does bring in a bit of revenue. So curbside collection, as you all know, in 2023, we moved to what we call basically a partial pay-as-you-throw program. So we do still allow people to pay a set fee for the disposal of garbage and recycling. And we are providing them with that a bag tag a week, essentially, to dispose of their waste. Anything above that, they're required to purchase a bag tag. We have just over 700 properties that we collect from for garbage and recycling in Greater Napanee. And as I mentioned, I think earlier, we have the limit of 3 bags of garbage per week for residential properties. And household hazardous waste, we have an annual event once a year, located at the Drainall or GFL building here in town. We accept various hazardous wastes and pesticides, cleaners, herbicides, waste oil, batteries, propane tanks, etc. In 2023, so this September, we diverted just over 25,000 liters and 2,195 kilograms of hazardous waste from our community through that event. We saw about 550 vehicles through that annual event, and it costs the municipality about $28,000 per year, and that's after we receive reimbursements for some of the waste that are received at that event. And then we have a leaf and brush and Christmas tree collection. So the leaf and brush collection is completed twice per year. It averages a total of nearly 700 staff hours and over 500 equipment hours per year. It does take nearly 2 weeks each spring and again each fall of our staff time and equipment hours for that period. And it costs an average of $60,000 per year for this collection. But through that, we do divert an average of 385 metric tons of leaf and brush materials per year. And then our Christmas tree collection is just done once a year in January. That collection, it takes about a week to get through the whole municipality, and it averages about 90 staff hours and 50 equipment hours with an approximate cost of $4,500 annually. So currently for waste alternatives, as I mentioned earlier, we now have 2 municipal giveaway days per year. Those have been deemed successful in the community, and we're recommending that they continue on. And then we've really tried to improve on promoting waste diversion through our communications department. And we're aiming to put out more seasonal reminders. So we've just included here one that was recently put together with some Halloween waste diversion tips. So we think that that's helping in improving waste diversion in our community. And also, as a municipality, we sell backyard composters and provide information regarding composting and how that should go. So basically, I've told you what we do, where we're at, and where the targets are. So now we're going to get into how we recommend that we move forward with reaching those targets. So for our waste disposal sites, we completed a survey. I guess I should backtrack. So based on usage and numbers alone, it's clear that the waste disposal site in Roblin is operating at a loss. But the committee doesn't feel confident in recommending, a full closure right now based on that. We've completed some surveys. We did only receive, I think, 54 responses to the surveys that went out based to determine kind of how people use the sites, how aware they are of alternate disposal locations, and basically why they're using the sites. Are they aware of curbside collection, et cetera? So the committee is recommending that we kind of proceed in 2024 with further communication or community engagement regarding that Roblin site, really trying to target the users that currently use that site and see why they're using it. If there's other things we can improve, if it's a real benefit to the community, et cetera. So that's a recommendation for 2024. And then below, I guess I should make it clear that highlighted in gray was dependent on the results of that survey. So it's not a recommendation of the committee at this time, but something that should be kind of in our back pocket for consideration. The other items for community consideration would be a reuse center. The The landfill at the South Fredericksburg waste site received materials every operating day that are not actually garbage. There's a lot of, furniture or toys and things that other people could reuse, but based on the legislation regarding scavenging, we can't allow people to go in there and take stuff out. So we're recommending that we consider opening a reuse center at that site. There is a building that's there, that an old garage that is currently being vacated by other departments that just had some old stuff in there anyway. That would be ideal to store stuff like that. There would be some things to really consider when operating such a site. You'd have to have a certain term that you'd leave stuff there, and then it would have to eventually go out into the landfill, et cetera. And you'd really have to be specific on what materials could be accepted there. But we do think that that could benefit the community and improve our waste diversion rates and ultimately prolong the life of that landfill. The costs we do feel would be fairly minimal because we're already staffing the site. It could be done with the current staff when the site's in current operation, so Saturdays and Wednesday afternoons in the summer. I lost my train of thought, but so we already have an environmental compliance approval for that site, and it does allow for a reuse center there. So it'd be a pretty straightforward process if that's something that we wanted to consider moving forward. And another thing that we do think should be implemented in 2024, which is kind of an easy thing, but we should be looking at promoting the alternative waste disposal locations in our community. So we do have some waste disposal sites that are, open better hours than us and maybe have comparable pricing. And yes, it would or could potentially affect our revenue. It's ultimately at some of the sites, it could be saving costs in transfer and disposal costs, but it ultimately could prolong the life of our landfill as well. So that would be an easy thing that we could work to do to kind of promote alternatives in our community. And some longer term considerations would be maybe a weigh scale at the South Fredericksburg site. This would allow us to accurately charge user fees for disposal and properly measure actual volumes of material that are going into the landfill. And the other item for consideration would be a compactor. Again, this is costly and a long-term consideration, but currently the landfill at South Fred is being compacted with a dozer. So I say compacted, but it's not even really, we're not even really achieving compaction. We're basically covering the landfill, and ultimately we're losing a lot of space in there. So if we had a long-term plan to purchase a compactor, we could, ultimately prolong the life of that site by achieving better compaction and letting the site work as it should. And I've lost my page again. So as far as the curbside collection goes, we are recommending as a committee that we continue with the special tax levy for the curbside collection. But we're recommending that council consider not mailing out the bag tags. So allowing one untagged bag a week. Based on some of the volumes we've seen, again, it's a very short window and these numbers could be skewed based on community growth. It does seem that there's been a bit of an increase in disposal tonnages of garbage since the bag tags were mailed out. So we just aren't convinced that this is really improving diversion and maybe allowing residents to put out one untagged bag a week rather than the thought of having to get rid of use up your bag tags could help to improve that. Another thing more long-term is an organics collection program. So obviously this is probably one of the most important or critical items that would lead us to a better diversion rate or achieving those provincial targets, but it does come with a cost. The recommendation here is that council considers this in 2026 when we're no longer paying full costs for recycling. This could benefit or positively benefit the budget at that time. And then with that, if we were to consider an organics collection program for the municipality, at that same time, we could consider reducing curbside collection to maybe bi-weekly. With this, there would be a cost savings, obviously, but this would also ultimately help encourage people to use that organics program that is offered and could help improve our diversion rates. So leaf, brush, and Christmas tree recommendations. We are recommending that we discontinue the spring leaf and brush collection. This is a very costly service that we're offering. And while it does provide definitely diversion, tonnages for diversion, it's a service that is kind of offered. There's other disposal options in our community. So our waste disposal sites do accept the materials. It collectively, as mentioned, I think it's the full year. So over 350 hours of staff time for just the seasonal collection. And this could lead to a $30,000 savings annually, but primarily it would allow our public works staff to prioritize those key spring maintenance projects and capital projects. The committee is also recommending that we discontinue the Christmas tree collection. So this is a unique one. So I think it was mentioned in one of the meetings, you get the tree to your house, you should be able to get it elsewhere. And I'm hesitant to say that, but I do think based on numbers, we don't see a ton of people using the service for the disposal. Some years we have 70, we've seen less, we've seen upwards over 200. So it does really fluctuate, but just the staff time and equipment hours alone, the committee was recommending that we discontinue that service where we do accept the materials at our waste disposal sites free of charge year round. And there are those alternative options. And then the other thing, and it kind of goes hand in hand with those first two recommendations, is we're recommending that staff explore alternative disposal locations for leaf and brush material and the Christmas trees. So, looking at town-owned properties that are in a more centralized location that may be more convenient than going all the way out to South Fred or Roblin to dispose of those materials. With that, I will say that there would be quite specific requirements for a site, what we would be looking for. And we can't guarantee that we could get environmental compliance approval to do that, but I think it's something that we should definitely consider and at least have staff starting to look into and making things a bit more centralized for some of our residents. And similar to that, one of the recommendations was during major storm events to basically allow staff to come to council and having a pre-selected location for such a thing, but basically allowing either an extra different operating hours for a disposal location after a significant storm if people wanted to get rid of, they had abundance of leaf and brush materials that they needed to get rid of, or maybe even considering doing an extra collection in those significant events if there was a certain area of town that really got hit with, a bad storm or such. So as far as household hazardous waste goes, the committee doesn't recommend any change to our annual event. It seems to be successful based on numbers. I know a while back there was chatter about maybe considering another event or partnering with another municipality to host a depot or such a thing. But at this time, the committee, based on numbers and trends, we think that the one event a year, while it's not convenient for everyone, it does seem to be working for our community. And again, there's a significant cost with that event as well. But we are recommending that we, in addition to that annual event, that we work to, similar to the waste disposal site alternatives, that we promote different locations within our community that we can get rid of, or residents can get rid of household hazardous waste. So there are, I know it's kind of an iffy thing to be promoting different businesses, but I do think that we should consider doing a real deep dive into what places in our area do accept those different wastes and promoting them to our residents. Because ultimately we could, I guess it's not, we're aiding in waste diversion. We're not improving our waste diversion rate with that, but we could have some cost savings there if we're allowing people to get rid of things elsewhere. And then our recommendations related to waste alternatives. So one of the recommendations is basically just to partner with local community groups or schools. We think there's a lot of opportunity to improve waste diversion or start different programs. I think someone had mentioned at one of our meetings that it may be the high school, but they assist with taking old bicycles and the students refurbish them and work on them. So those are things that we can help to promote in our community and ultimately help get waste out of the landfill, or in that case, scrap metal sent for final disposal that could be reused elsewhere. That's an easy one with really no cost associated with it. And then one of the recommendations was to draft an RFP to explore waste alternative options. So this could be something minor in nature, or it could be, something like an incinerator in our community. But basically, releasing an RFP would allow anyone in the industry in the area to provide us with information of what really is out there and how can we ultimately help improve our diversion rates in our community. So that was a longer term consideration, not for 2024, but something that we may consider looking at as we wish to achieve those waste diversion rates. And we think that we could work with our communications team to further develop information on our website. One of the recommendations was some frequently asked questions. That's an easy fix that could really lead to improved waste diversion. And then the last one for consideration there, and unfortunately we didn't have enough information to recommend it for 2024, but it was a compost bin incentive. So other municipalities offer or have been known to offer rebates on the sale of compost bins, and then sharing information with that, and really ultimately improving waste diversion. How many times can I say that? So we've given 17 recommendations there. Some are very easily implemented in 2024. Some have costs associated, some have cost savings, and then some are longer term to consider. But we do feel that, if all of them were financially feasible, we would very easily reach those that 80% diversion target for the province. But even if we do select just a few, we think that we'll be hopefully on the right track to improving our waste diversion in our community. But ultimately, the biggest thing is that we need to see a culture change, and we need to ensure that waste diversion becomes a priority in our community, right? So at all levels. So that's all I had. It was a lot, but I'm available for any questions.
Thanks, Christy. As I'm sitting here, I'm trying to toy. I think maybe the best way to go about this, if we go back to slide 11, waste disposal site recommendations. And maybe what we can do is I know we're going to hear a lot of questions, hear a lot of comments tonight from council. Maybe we can dissect your complete report, because there's a lot of information there. Just dissect it slide by slide. And that way we can stay focused with respect to the certain recommendations that are in there. So,
sure.
and I want to try and make it as easy for you, because like I say, I just don't want to skip all over the ice kind of thing, and have people kind of going back and forth through different slides. So would that be easy for you if we start with the waste diversion site recommendations, and I'll put it out to council with respect to those recommendations that you see in front of you, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Does anybody have any questions or comments with respect to those 6 recommendations? And I think Councillor Pennell can start us off. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Christy, thank you very much for coming here today and giving us this report. Sorry,
11.
Yeah, it's page, page 11. If I think, Deputy Mayor, if you go onto the website, as if if you were just a regular citizen and pull it up there as opposed to agenda notes, I don't think it really was updated very well on an agenda notes. So I stumbled with that as well. So we'll just give you a few minutes there and then Councillor Brunel can start the conversation.
I just will add, if you're looking at the report, it should be the last page of the full report.
Okay, no, that's great. Go ahead, Councillor Brunel.
Thank you, Worship, through you. Christy, thanks again for coming here and giving us this report. I have comments on every page, so you'll be hearing from me tonight pretty good. But the closure of the Roblin dump, I know the numbers are down. We look at that. However, that dump serves a purpose through Ward 3. We've seen that there has been, when the dump is closed, or maybe it's even closed a little early on a day it's slow, I've personally seen garbage dropped out at the gate and stuff. So people are using this. I see that on the one slide, it looks like it's 150 tons of garbage, of household garbage is being dropped off or transferred there per year, where the self-read is 50. So we do have importance there. And also to have, if we were to stick with the leaf and brush drop off at the self-read, from Ward 3 to drive all the way to self-read is a huge, so it's probably not going to happen. And I would hate to take away a service that we're already providing. And I think that these services, I know that there was a lot of talk in your presentation, which I appreciate, about diversion, but I also, when I hear about diversion, I immediately think of, I don't want to deal with it anymore, so let's put it over to somebody else. And I don't want that to happen in Ward 3, especially with the leaf and stuff. We'll talk about that in a second, but to travel from Ward 3 all the way up to self-read is a long drive for that. So that's what I just have with that. And also in 2019, we received the report, and it had on that report both the giveaway days and the reuse center. And I think last year was the first year for the giveaway days, and has become successful. And therefore, I do believe that the reuse center as well would be a great addition to it. And if we try it, then we'll know. But you know, when we put stuff out on the street and it goes, I'm sure it would at that location as well. So that'd be something that I'd be really pleased to see on that. That's all I have to say on that slide. So we'll let somebody else go. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Brunel. Councillor Hicks.
Through you, your worship. Christy, just to follow up on what Councillor Pinnell said about the reuse center, I know that Morningstar quite often looks for furniture and that sort of thing. You may be able to get a volunteer there. So which would leave our staff to deal with that, and they would be able to flag things that they could use, like it's a direct route to actually repurposing the stuff. So just something to put out there if you're talking community partnerships. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Is there any other questions? Councillor Shank.
My question is that I don't have the fine numbers of what the cost of Roblin transfer site is, but when you look at the large amount of garbage that's being used, but we have door-to-door pickup. So that's where I would assume, now I'm just assuming here because I don't see the numbers. All right. But that's where your $90,000 loss of operating that is. And when you look at the amount of garbage that's being used, it dumped with a lot more tonnage, but less garbage tonnage and a lot more users. All right. In the south is where therefore your major cost of loss it would be is the garbage. Now, if we discontinued the garbage, but still had the leaf and everything else, because we are providing that service, it's just a thought, but we're going to have a few more meetings over this. It's not going to be just a one thing solved, but all I'm saying is that we have to figure out where the loss is and what the major cost is. But when we have door-to-door pickup, all right, and you have 150 tons going in that we have to transfer, but we're already providing that service, that's something that we're gonna have to take a long, hard look at, guys. You know what I mean? I know it might be for years, I used to go to South Fred, just go directly there, all right? And now, since it's door to door and I'm paying for that service, and even though I had my own collection, you know, with a bin, but now if I put out a bag every other day, you know, every other week, all right? So it's something, that's one number, and that's something we're gonna have to discuss, whether we can still provide that service of garbage, you know what I mean? And look at, you know, look at both sites or what we can do. But the problem is when there's a lot of cottagers also, and they're gone and they're not gonna leave that bag of garbage there because it's gonna be ripped up. What are we gonna do with that? So there's more discussion that's gonna be involved in this.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, Councillor Shank. Go ahead, Councillor Brunel.
Thank you, Worship. Just to carry on with what Councillor Shank was saying was that with, although we do have the door-to-door service, it's obvious with 150 tons of garbage being brought into there as a transfer, the people that are bringing those bags of garbage in there are paying more money to bring it to that dump than they are just to put a tag on it. So obviously there's something going on, which could be, I never thought of what Councillor Shank just said. It could just easily be the cottagers or something along those lines, but there's something going on where people are willing to pay more monies to bring them into that location than simply leaving it at the end of their driveway. Thank you.
I think if I can, one thing to add there is that with the Roblin site, we don't have a way of measuring what's bulky waste currently, what's bulky waste or household garbage. So that total number that you're mentioning is actually including bulky waste bins, bulky waste transfer as well. Whereas in South Fred, we were able to separate those volumes.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Shank, and then I'll go back to Councillor Brunel.
That's the reason why we're gonna have more. So just so I understand this, because I don't deal with garbage every day, bulky waste. So therefore, if I have a whole bunch of, you know, non-recyclable stuff in the back of my truck, you know what I mean? It goes ahead. That is, so when I see garbage, that isn't household garbage alone. That is the major line item. That includes bulky waste also.
So we would kind of define bulky waste as like old furniture or material, like large item, children's toys that couldn't be disposed of in recycling. That would typically go in the landfill at the South Fredericksburg site. We do also have bins at the Roblin site to accept those materials, and they're transferred off site. But the Roblin site also does accept household garbage, which is like bagged domestic garbage.
Yeah, no. Yeah, no.
There goes my thought that it was all household garbage. So do you have any idea what the breakdown would be? Like, because I would assume now that it's the bulky waste comes in.
For the
90% of that might be bulky waste.
For the Roblin site, at the time of the report, we don't. We could go through each individual invoice and determine that, but we didn't. We hadn't done that at this time.
And did you want to speak to that, Councillor Pinar? Are you good?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I was just going to say it should be there. Obviously, you didn't do it, which is fine. But because you do pay per bag and an additional cost per bag, and then so much.
Based on volumes.
Am I right? Because, pardon me?
You pay so much per bag, and then you would pay the bulky waste based on your volume. Yes, there's volume.
Yeah,
charges
that's
there.
right. So if I brought a 4x8 trailer by 2 feet high, you would cube it, and it's so much per cube. And then you'd say, okay, I have 5 bags of garbage, then you'd charge me for 5 bags, right?
That's correct,
Yeah,
yes.
okay. So the numbers are there somewhere, but I appreciate the fact that you didn't bring them. Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Calver.
So with these two waste sites that we have, are they strictly for Greater Napanee residents only? And is somebody actually checking?
That is correct. So we have data sheets that our staff ask addresses. And you know, I'll be quite honest, there's probably houses along a boundary that, you know, often get missed, but for the most part, they're quite, a lot of the users are regulars, so they do quite come to know where they're from. But yes, we are, based on our environmental compliance approvals for the sites, we can only accept waste from Greater Napanee. And for those sites, we're also not supposed to, and again, this is a bit of a gray area because people have unmarked vehicles and such, but we're not supposed to accept commercial waste. So it's supposed to be just household materials.
Yeah, that was part two of my question, because I do see a lot of unmarked trailers traveling with a lot of construction waste and shingles and stuff, and no clue where they're going, but I'm sure they're not all on the side of the road. Okay, that's it for that question. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Deputy Mayor Calver. Councillor Hicks.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Christy, you mentioned that you're not actually breaking down the invoices now. Is it possible to do that? Because without the data, you can't be accurate in any assumptions. So I would really strongly suggest that staff start doing that with every invoice that comes in. And then next year, when we're all gathered again, we should have some good solid data to work with. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Is there anything else from council with respect to this slide? Go ahead, Councillor Shank.
One thing I would like to see is, besides these recommendations, with the $90,000 loss, and we set the policy, you guys look after the day-to-day operations. What are your suggestions to remove that $90,000 and still provide the service? Because people in the north, and Councillor Pinell is exactly right, like people are from the north are not going to travel all the way to South Fred to get rid of their stuff. And we don't want to have Bill going nuts with fires. So what do you suggest to keep it open, but still reduce the cost? If you increase the price, or what can you do to be more efficient to still provide the service, but still not have a $90,000 loss? That's what I just would like to see. Not today, of course, but at a later date.
I will just add, I don't have a full answer here, but I will add that the committee's recommendation is to further community engagement. So determine, we're not recommending closing that Roblin site, but we want to know why the people are using it or what their needs are. Definitely, I think that'll be a huge benefit to moving forward. I think the other thing to keep in mind is there is a privately ran site, and I mean, that's not always the solution, but there is a privately ran site in that area, in that immediate area, that actually is comparable costs and is open, when we're closed, essentially. So there's an option there, but definitely, we're not recommending closing it right now. It needs to be explored, the needs of that community.
Great, thanks, Councillor Shank. Is there anything else? I've just got a couple of things, but just with respect to the waste scale and the compactor, there's no indication that we want to engage in this in 2024. Am I correct in that?
That's correct. No, this is
Okay.
a longer term thought.
Because
Just something we
obvious-
need to keep in our back pocket.
Okay, I assume that just because there's going to be some extremely large costs associated to that, I'm guessing. As well as to promote the alternative disposal locations. Is there consideration for trying to attract private disposal sites as we have north of Napanee? And is there any advantage to doing that, I guess, in your opinion?
So that's what we're recommending here, that we, we help them in promoting their locations. We're only open Saturdays, but there's this location. And it's kind of been a gray area for municipality in the past because it's difficult to promote private businesses, but the committee is recommending if council so wishes that we do kind of work with them and help promote those alternate locations.
And just as you were answering that, is there data or the data that is accumulated at these private locations, is that included in our, it's not?
It is not, no. So
So-
it's municipally collected and disposed of only.
Okay.
So it is not, but you would see a reduction in total numbers. So it may not really affect your diversion rate too much, but
No, okay, great. Is there anything that comes out of my questions or is there, yeah, go ahead, Deputy Mayor Calver.
I guess we're not getting into it tonight, but do we know what size of dozer we're using now to try to compact the dump? And what kind of time frame, if we had the proper compactor, how much extra time would it allow for our dump?
I don't know offhand, and I should know what dozer we're using, but I don't. Is actually a rental, so we do have a cost associated with that currently. And again, I don't know exactly, but we're significantly, in the last couple of years, we've really changed our operations to ensure we're doing things properly. And with the covering requirements, we're taking up a significant volume just in covering, because we're not getting that compaction. But I don't have the exact how long that would potentially prolong the life of that site.
And just to follow up, what is the, I know I read it through earlier, but what is the expected life of that landfill down there right now?
Approximately 40 years, might be about 38, but in that area.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Carver. And then just to follow up on Deputy Mayor Carver's, obviously, we're leasing a piece of equipment down there that's not quite what we need. Is there any advantage or is there any opportunity to actually lease or rent the proper piece of equipment?
We have looked into it. The costs for the lease would be quite significant. It's something we could definitely consider, but we do feel in the general area, it's difficult to find a lease on that type of equipment, specialized equipment.
Yeah, I'm assuming they're not sitting on every corner then. Councillor Shank.
I'd like to know what the cost is, at another meeting, of what the rental is on the dozer. And I think don't quote me on it. I think it's a D3. It's not a big dozer.
No, it's not.
All right. What I would like also is have you guys investigate, being in the agricultural and somebody's putting in a lagoon or whatever. A friend of mine went ahead and bought just a normal land roller, like a road roller, and then went ahead and took the roller off and actually put the knuckle one on for the compaction that he needed. Went ahead and put that in, and he had it done extremely cheap. He did it himself. All right. And just put that on. He took a normal one. I think he bought it on Gov Deals. All right. And then put the proper compactor that you see at the large compaction sites. So there's different options that we might be able to look into. All right. For the compaction point.
Thank you. And as far as the costs, we can bring those or identify those out at the operating budget for sure.
Great. Is there anything else? So if not, we'll move on to the next slide. Seeing nothing. We'll move on to the curbside collection recommendations, and I see we have 3 recommendations there. Is there who wants? Councillor Pennell, go ahead.
Thank you, Worship, through you, Christy. Thank you again. When we were going through all this bag tag, we all know how difficult it was to come to the decision of what we did. And there was always going to be something that was left out or didn't look at or whatever. And one of the things in this recommendation, not sure if you looked at it or not, but if we allow for one bag to be, if we charge the levy and only certain people in town, only certain users are being charged that levy, households, multi-use residentials for up to 5 or 6, anybody else above that are not being charged that. So there could be a lot of untagged bags left on the street that had no charge. So therefore, the leftover is going to be divvied up onto the tax bill, right? So it's hard when somebody doesn't use the service to be charged for the service. And I guess that's what I'm getting at. The other thing is that having a bag, an untagged bag, there could be the possibility of myself putting my bag out at 5 o'clock in the morning as I go to work. And my neighbor knows my schedule and he goes out and he has 2 bags for this week and he drops one beside mine. Which bag is going to be picked up? So that's the issue. One bag is not going to be picked up and it hasn't been paid for. So that's a problem. Also, I know I already spoke about this a little bit, but charging for service that's not being given is something that we have to look at here. So it's a bag of worms, this whole garbage thing with the residential pickup and how we charge for it. But I don't believe an untagged or an unidentified bag is the way to go.
Thank you, Councillor Pennell. Councillor Martin.
Councillor Pennell, I actually agree with you on that one. There's roughly I think there's 40% of our population residents are tenants as well, and those tenants don't pay tax other than the landlord gets the tax bill, and whether he does or does not, include that in their rent is, but a renter doesn't necessarily pay tax of any kind, whether it's the levy or the general tax. So there's going to be an awful lot of people not paying for garbage. They can just put out an untagged bag and they've paid nothing towards that service whatsoever. And there's other situations too where like we don't charge the levy on duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, fiveplexes. We charge 1 unit out of 5. So there's going to be 4 tenants in there that can put out an untagged bag and have paid nothing towards it. So that, yeah, I agree with what you're saying on that one. And I'm not trying to go against my own waste diversion committee here. Christie's doing a marvelous job. So, but yeah, you're exactly right on the free bag thing. We didn't discuss a lot, Christie, I don't think, on the free bag. It was just kind of a suggestion, wasn't it, at the committee meeting?
It was discussed at the meeting. But
We didn't discuss the pros and the cons, I guess is what, and we're getting into a lot of the cons tonight. And I hope everybody realizes these are just suggestions, and we're going to get into budget meetings later on, but these are only suggestions. And there's things in my own that my own committee have recommended that I'm not 100% behind, but as you know, committee depends on it could be a 4-1 vote or a 5-1 vote or a 5-2 vote or whatever it is, but everybody doesn't always agree on everything. And but that's one thing you're quite right on. I agree with.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Hicks.
Through you, your worship. So I have 2 questions. The first question is organics collection program, which I know you have forecasted for possible implementation in 2026. What companies would we still be using waste management?
That would be probably a discussion with our clerk that we would have to have, but they did bid on, when we put the RFP out originally, we did allow for bidding on an organics program. It was kind of a, something we may consider in the future. We didn't have to commit to it, but there was pricing provided for that. So it would be dependent on our contract. I'm unsure of that.
Okay, thank you. And refresh my memory, when is the contract up?
It was a 10-year contract, so 2030.
And one further question.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
I know that Kingston has 1 free bag a week, if I'm not mistaken. Now they're predominantly all urban. Our issue is we have urban, which has had residential pickup basically since it became a thing. And then you have rural where it's just as more people move out to the country from the urban areas, it's become an expectation. Does Kingston, have you spoken to other municipalities to get any feedback on what they've experienced?
We have a bit before we, I think it was last year when it was originally recommended. It seems to be success in actually not just Kingston. There's a lot of municipalities that use this program. But I mean, there's pros and cons with, I think, any option we end up moving forward with for sure. And we're kind of in a unique situation where we do have such a large urban area, but then our rural areas, as you mentioned, quite large as well. And there's different needs there. So.
Yep, thanks, Councillor Hicks. Is there anything else? I just have a couple comments, but go ahead, Councillor Shank, and I'll go to Councillor Pennell.
Christie, you're very likely going to be looking at different sites that we can do on our own property, like you said in your presentation, but we could possibly look at organic sites ourselves on our own property, correct? But this is something that we can look after. I deal with a lot with organics being a farmer. So, but I want to back to the original, what we were discussing about the fees and everything else, but it's from 2018 to 2022. I wasn't even at the one slide, and I think it was on page 9. All right. on curbside collection volume of household garbage versus recycling. You drop 10% in recycling usage. So it isn't just like boom, just because of this, what we put in to cover the cost. But what I know during budget time, I'd like to still see what it would cost if we put all the garbage on, dollar wise on everybody's taxes and what it would cost. All right. Or this system here as a user pay system where the residents are doing it and what their costs are. Just so we can look at the numbers, and numbers don't lie. Not that we're going to go ahead and revisit, but all I'm saying is, as you can see the trend since 2018, from when I've seen the numbers are actually gone down. All right. And we've gone up 282 households. All right. From what I'm doing your math of what you're collecting. So when you're looking at the numbers, people are carrying less. Now it's during COVID time, like really like everything was free for garbage in this town. But when you look at what you're doing is saying, where's the problem? The people are not carrying. It wasn't just because of last year, and we don't even have in this slide 2023. All right, this was since 2018 to 2022. So there's just some of the other comments that you'd like to hear from us to maybe get information on that we can discuss.
Absolutely. And sorry, just to clarify, for budget time, you're looking for basically what it could look like with the special tax levy as it is now, and then what it is for the whole tax base covering the cost of the curbside collection.
The only reason why is every ratepayer that has a concern over the program that we have, that's going to question, they're going to ask. All right. The numbers don't lie. And I'm going to say, okay, if we did it the old way, this is what it would cost. If we did it this way, and what could we do? Because right now you've decreased 10% in lot 1, 2, 3 in the last 5 years, and you're trying to hit 20, 50%. I'm going, you can do all the organics you want. And I know in the middle of the summertime, especially cottagers, you know what I mean? And in the rural area, we have a lot of wildlife. So it's going to be a little on the, that's something we can discuss at a later date.
Yep. Thanks, Councillor Shank. Councillor Pennell, you had something else?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I did. And then I just got really thinking about this last one too. So I gotta be careful what I say, but I'll think about it a little bit more. Sorry, back to the organics. Back when we got the quote or the RFP for the contract that we're in now. When we got the contract that we're in now, we went out for organics and it was roughly $300,000 more, something like that. And I see you have a quote of 375. I'm just wondering that pricing of 375. I'm just wondering, does that include the startup? Does that include the bins?
I believe that was included, and that was the price from the RFP. Yes, general, based on anticipated volumes of what we would see changed over to organics.
Right, when you say RFP, because you have a note there that's 2020 pricing, the 375. So you went out for that and they included the bins then. So
The collection, yes.
okay,
I believe it included the bins. I should clarify. I can confirm, but yeah.
No,
I believe that was the full cost.
that's okay. I just think that going to an organic bin pickup here might be a little bit difficult with the way that they pick them up with the trucks and where do we put these? And we have a walking audit going on right now. Our sidewalks are kind of not even and all this other wonderful stuff. So I think that I'd like to look at an alternative way of doing organics with, but we'll talk about that a little bit later in the meeting. Thanks.
I guess I should clarify to the RFP for that at the time included a completely separate truck. So it would be one truck that did a certain area each day of the week, and would be basically an automated collection on those organic bins.
Thanks, Councillor Pennell. Councillor Shank?
Instead of me taking up everybody's time, I'm going to have Councillor Hicks go ahead and tell everybody what we did in Dovelstown. When we had organic program, everybody had a little organic compost in their backyard, and we did a lot of these things 30 years ago, but I'll let Councillor Hicks explain this.
Through your worship.
I guess you're up next, Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Councillor Shank. So basically, myself and I think there was 3 or 4 other residents of Adolphustown, and yes, it was more than 30 years ago, Mike. We issued free compost bins. So keep in mind at the time prior to amalgamation, Adolphustown was primarily rural. So everybody had a little bit of property. And of course, it's a lot of seasonal. So it was determined that transportation was the biggest cost and still is putting the truck on the road, that by composting, we were promoting the waste diversion, but also in the winter months when the cottagers were gone, the snowbirds were gone, we reduced garbage pickup to bi-weekly. And I can't remember now what the savings were, but it was fairly significant. And also keep in mind that we had Hay Bay in between South Adolphustown and North Adolphustown. But the program itself worked really good, and there was really good buy-in. Now, with the original town of Napanee being urban, very urban, and a lot of multi-family buildings, renters, that sort of thing, I don't know how all of that would be implemented. But I do have one question for you, Christy. And this is about Stone Mills. I wasn't aware, but Stone Mills has absolutely no residential pickup. Is that correct?
No, that's kind of. So the village of Newburgh does have residential pickup, but the rest of us, I'm a Stone Mills resident, we do have to take our waste to the waste disposal site.
May I ask one further question?
Absolutely. Councillor Hicks, go ahead.
How does that impact your life?
Well, given that that's what I'm used to, it works, but it's, you know, every Saturday or Wednesday, we have to get the waste there if we have it. So yeah, it's just something we've been used to. We haven't had the curbside collection service, but.
So may I go one step further?
One more. Yep, go ahead.
Okay.
We can go more than one, but go ahead.
We don't take garbage as in household waste at South Fred for transfer.
That's correct.
Right?
It transfers offsite.
So I don't know how it works in Stone Mills, but if you have rural people and if they were actually going to see a significant reduction perhaps in their taxes, so I don't know, call it a reverse levy. If you take your garbage to the dump, if we remove curbside pickup, what's Councillor Pennell doing right now? Okay. Just but is it possible? I know like we would have to look at somehow splitting this, but it's the rural areas that are costing the money because the houses are not in a block, they're in a concession, if you will. So is that something that the diversion committee has actually looked at? Is changing the makeup of how this is done?
We haven't. We haven't looked at it basically like the urban rural areas. No, the only thought we had was again, the bottom one there, reducing it for the whole community if we did the organics program. But no, it's certainly something we could look at and explore. A change in service level is obviously always difficult, but something that can be explored.
Yeah, very much so. Is there anything else? I'll weigh in with a couple of comments. Seeing none, just with respect to the untagged bag, I have to agree with what we've heard tonight. I think it's going to be a challenge, especially, I mean, there's challenges in the rural area, but there's going to be challenges as well with the urban areas with respect to the direction that the province wants to go with granny suites and backroom appliance. It looks like a single family dwelling residence from the outside, but there could be 3 families living on that property. So it's going to cause some challenges. And I just want to reiterate that the organics collection and the reduction of the curbside collection isn't something that we're going to be looking at for 2024 or 2025. And by the looks of it and by reading the report, it's something that we could consider in 2026 when we see how the recycling, the cost of recycling is going to be downloaded on the producer as opposed to the consumer. And that should be coming into play end of 2025. Am I correct, Christie?
I believe around 2026, yes, we should see it.
Yeah, so I mean, we realize that there should be some savings for a municipality with respect to the recycling. And that may be, and I think that's probably why the committee suggested 2026, is that if there is some savings, we can explore some other options. So and I just want to reiterate, this isn't something we're looking at for 2024 during our budget time.
That's correct.
Okay, is there anything that comes out of that? And if not, we'll move on. Okay, we'll move on to the next slide, which is leaf, brush, and Christmas tree disposal recommendations. I see there's 4 recommendations. So would somebody like to start with this? Go ahead, Councillor Brunel.
Thank you, Worship. Christy, thanks for bringing this up. So you can imagine this year is a little late or something, I guess, with the leaves falling off. We had some good weather or something, but if you take a drive around even on today, a day like today, you can see that there's a lot of leaves left, a lot of brush still. And yet the the fall pickup is happening now. It's about a month early compared to last year. And I totally understand, that we're in rainy weather and people put out bags and they get wet and they break up, and it's an issue for our public works to pick this up. I understand that. However, is that there's a lot of talk of, well, we can still take it to the landfill. A lot of residents don't have that ability to do that. If their land is very well treated, it's not 1 or 2 bags. So it'd be multiple trips, even if they have a vehicle or if they have the means of being able to do that. So I feel that it's a great service for our community to have a leaf and brush pickup. And now bringing that into consideration, let's say, for instance, that we don't do another one this year, but we cancel the spring one. So if we had the spring one still, people could leave the leaves on the ground, and some of them compost or whatever over the time, that's fine. They can mulch them or do whatever if they have the means. But in the spring, they could look forward to, after the snow melts, to be able to pick these leaves up, put them in there and know that they're going to be picked up. If we take that away, then we're in a mess. So I don't believe that removing the spring is an option. And it's always hard to predict what the weather's going to be like and when the leaves are going to be on the ground. I fully understand that, but it's still not just good enough for us to say there's an alternative way they can take it somewhere, because not everybody can. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pennell. Councillor Norrie.
Thank you, Christy. Good presentation. Just thinking, $30,000 in saving for not having a spring one. Does that include staff wages that we pay anyways but they're not doing something else? Is that the thinking behind it? Why you're putting 30,000? Not you, but why 30,000 is in there?
That's correct. I guess it wouldn't be a full 30,000 because it does include staff wages and equipment time, but it would be used elsewhere. That number does include disposal as well.
Thank you, Councillor Norrie. Is there any other questions or comments? Councillor Hick, I see you reaching for the microphone.
Through your worship. Where are the leaves and the brush disposed of? At both sites, Roblin and South Fred?
That's correct. It depends on the location. There's another location that we take the general materials from the urban area for the collection. And then if they're in this closer to the South Fred site, we do take them there. Not often do they take them to the Roblin site.
Yep, go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
So then that leads me to ask, they're not actually transferred off site, are they? They're like the leaves and the branches and the Christmas trees, like they're not being taken there and then taken somewhere else?
Yes. So the South Fredericksburg site, we do grind them there and use them for cover material. And the other sites either get to South Fred or are used for other materials. They eventually compost, or they're given, sometimes we put them outside a gate and allow people to take the mulch if they so wish. But yeah.
Can we sell it for a profit?
This based on the size of it and what it is, because it has so much of the the leaves in it. Eventually, if we did a full compost on it and we're licensed to do that, we probably could. But with what we're doing now, it's not really of much value for, I mean, some people like it for their gardens and such, but it's not, you know, an ornamental material or real beneficial material until it actually composts. It's something to consider though, for sure.
Thanks, Councillor Hicks. Councillor Shank, did you have something?
If they kept the wood that they, but the brush, they would go ahead and that they chip but the leaves separately and they ground the leaves. And if you had an organic site there, you can go ahead and you have a payloader that comes down anyway, I think. And if you went ahead and rotated that, you'd be able to end up having soil that you could go ahead and give away. I know the mushroom fact and mushroom farm in Wellington gives their compostable, you know, for the garden. Now you're going to have 1,000 weeds in it, but all I'm saying is there's another diversion instead of what you know, there's all different options that we can do here. So, and the $30,000, the comment was made, that is just a number for numbers to be, this is what time, material, machinery, and everything else to pick up the garbage. Whether they're doing that job or some other job, that's basically for the, I looked at the hours, I think there's 384 man hours that was used that I read in here. All right, plus and plus. So therefore that's where you came up with that $30,000.
That's correct. Yes. So,
So
I
if
mean,
they
it would
wouldn't
be
doing,
allocated.
if they
elsewhere.
weren't doing that, then they would be working at another location or whatever.
The biggest, just to add there through you, the biggest issue or comment we've heard is that this collectively takes about 2 weeks' time, the collection. So it's taking staff from other priority maintenance tasks, especially in the spring. You know, we want to get a head start on capital projects and such. So it does collectively take a lot of their man hours that should be or could be used elsewhere.
Yep, very much so. Is there any other questions or comments? I'll weigh in a little bit here as well. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Cower.
So when they do the leaf and brush pickup now, do they actually go around with a chipper at that time and chip it and shred it? I'm just wondering if that would save a little bit of time. If that was done, you'd be able to get more in a truck versus, you know, what you are picking up just bags. I know today myself, just because of ticks, I took, got a pretty small backyard, but it took 5 of those big bags that went into my dumpster today. You know, if I had had a chipper or a shredder, I could have probably reduced that down to half a bag. I just wondered if that was an option that we could do when we're going around picking up brush and stuff. If we can't just, I know we have a chipper, why can we just chip it right on the spot and then take it out to South Fred?
I can't comment on that because I'm not directly involved in the public works operations, but I don't know if it's a health and safety concern on the roadway or whatnot, but I think it's probably something that's either been considered or again, we can find out.
No, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Deputy Mayor Cower. Is there anything else, or I can just weigh in a little bit. I like the idea of exploring the option of an alternate drop-off location that may resolve possibly the Christmas tree collection. You know, when I read that, I didn't see a lot of big numbers there, considering we have a big geographic location. But again, I like the idea, at least exploring it anyways. And if it's something that's not functional or feasible, then we can continue on. But I like the idea of exploring that. As well as it sort of goes hands in hand with exploring the opportunity for a temporary depot. I mean, I think there's probably one and in the same, I think is probably what you're looking or thinking of, but that's really all I have with respect to that slide. Is there anything that comes out of my comments? Go ahead, Councillor Shank.
I'm just throwing out these ideas. Sorry for taking everybody's time, but I was at a location, another place in this country, where what they did is they put all their Christmas trees, they put it in a certain location, and they actually had made it a winter festival of it, and they burned them all and made it into I don't know if that's environmentally correct, but you know, they made it into actually quite a party, and I was there, and it was very well attended, and they combined that with the little rib fest also, and you know, and it was really cold out there that day, but everybody enjoyed themselves.
Yeah, there are some kind of unique ideas that are out there throughout our country. So it is kind of a neat idea. So, Councilor Martin.
There is one other way of getting rid of Christmas trees too, and I think Christie alluded to using alternative things, but the wildlife center out there always needs Christmas trees for forage feed for animals. So, and it's close to town. So, I mean, it wouldn't be, it's not like having to take it all the way to Southrid. Just another option on the Christmas tree thing that you were talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And I like Christie's. I mean, yes, if we can get them home, we could probably get them somewhere else, right? So anyways, if there's nothing else, we'll move on to the next slide. Household hazardous waste disposal recommendations, promote alternate disposal locations. Does anybody want to start with this one? Go ahead, Councilor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship, through you. Once again, Christy, thanks for this. I'm looking at the numbers from 2022. We had 419 vehicles from 505 households, which equaled 23,835 liters of hazardous waste, or 2,235 kilograms. 2023, we had 549 vehicles, 632 households with 25,130 liters, or 21,095 kilograms. The program's obviously working, and it's a great, it's a great thing, because really, how easy is it to not participate in this and have the stuff go in the landfill? With that being said, I'm wondering if maybe not for 2024, but maybe in the very near future, if we try to have 2 of these a year. I know there's a big expense of something like 28 grand that you mentioned, but it's obviously working. But I'm wondering how many people out there miss it, because it was September 9th. I missed it this year, but that's different. And somebody could possibly have to hold their contamination, their hazardous waste, for up to 1 year less a day, or 364 days. So I'm just wondering if something like that happened, do they hang on to it that long, or does it make its way into the waste? So obviously the program's working. It's really great. I'm impressed with the numbers, but I'm just wondering if we could look at it again, maybe not for 24, because it's going to be a tight budget anyway, but maybe if we look at it and just see if we can increase those numbers. Thank you.
So just to add, that's the recommendation, to promote those alternate locations. So if someone in our community does miss the event, that's kind of what we're hoping to do here, is allow them to understand where they can dispose of it, so they don't have to hold on to it for a full year. And just to add, the reason that the committee didn't recommend another event was because, yes, we see significant volumes the last couple of years, but in 2020, 2021, we 2020, we seen almost 50,000 liters of waste and almost 800 vehicles through there. So we have seen a decline over the past few years. Not to say that, again, people might just miss it. There's probably a lot of reasons to see that change, but.
Great, thanks, Christy. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just on this alternate waste disposable for hazardous waste. There is alternate again. I'm wondering if we need to educate people, like Councillor Pennell, for example. Home Hardware takes used paint and cans, takes the cans and the paint and everything. Rexall Drugstore, Canadian Tire, Napanee, Listen Up Canada on Bridge, Napanee Home Hardware. They all take used batteries, both the chargeable and the single usable. So I'm just thinking maybe we need to educate people too, that there is alternative. Actually, I just found out today that our Canadian Tire doesn't take used oil, because Canadian Tire has a Go Eco system normally. And Kingston Canadian Tires do, where you can take your oil, your used oil, you can take your oil filter, everything, and dispose of it there free of charge. And I was hoping our Canadian Tire did, but I just found out today from my fellow councillor here on my left side that our Canadian Tire doesn't do that. So, but there are other alternative methods if we don't have twice a year hazardous waste days. But anyway, just a thought.
Thanks, Councilor Bernard or Councilor Martin. I think you do bring up a good point. Maybe that's something that I know we talked about our website in the past, but maybe that's something that we can maybe upgrade our website with that, that identifies the fact that, and I know that you ladies are probably way ahead of me on this, but I'm just stating the obvious, but maybe that's something that when, you know, the citizens of our community, they get on our website, say, geez, we're going to get rid of these batteries. They can Google that on our website and find a spot, right?
Yes, that's exactly the recommendation here. We want to promote those locations, but just because it's always been a gray area to promote different businesses, we want council's support to do that.
Okay, great. That's, I knew you were way ahead of me on it. So is Deputy Mayor Gower.
Yeah, it would be awesome if we could find a place for people to get rid of their waste oil. We hit it daily at our business. People coming in wanting to know, well, where can I get rid of my waste hydraulic oil or my waste engine oil? Because there are a lot of people that do oil changes. And I'm just sitting here going through my head the amount of 20-liter pails of oil that leave my business every year. The oil's going out of the jugs. Where is it going out of the machines?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Is there any other comments or questions with respect to household hazardous waste disposal recommendations? Seeing none. Recommendations related to waste alternatives, and I see that we do have 4 recommendations there. Who would like to start off here? Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Christie, I think one of the best thing is maybe if we could introduce the backyard composting and sell them at a discount, that sort of thing. Maybe do some kind of a learning on this, because much like I was just educated on hazardous waste and stuff, I probably need to be educated on how to do that, because I don't know how to do it. Anyway, we do that, but also too, Councillor Hicks brought up a point about people that are don't have a big backyard and stuff like that. There's at a couple of seminars that we've been away at, they're promoting these countertop composters, and they're fairly dear, they're fairly expensive and such, and they do take a while to compost, but it is an alternative for people that are in apartments or don't have a big backyard or something like that. But I think that that's something that we should really look at as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pennell. Is there any other questions or comments? Councillor Hicks.
Through you. Christie, I know Loyalist has implemented one of the systems, and the only one that comes to mind is the Lomi, which I know that's not the one that Loyalist is using, and it's subsidized. Is that how they're running that program?
There's a food cycler program, I believe it is. Some local municipalities have implemented it. Our committee was they did reach out to the committee. At the time, the committee kind of deemed it not as a recommendation. There were concerns. Yes, the municipality would subsidize it. There are concerns about, and maybe it's not specific to that company, but whether it's actually truly compost, or what if they're just drying it out or whatnot, and the long-term use of that, excess use of energy and such. But it's definitely something our municipality could consider for sure. Just wasn't a recommendation from the committee at this time.
Thanks, Councillor Hicks. Is there anything else? Yep, go ahead, Councillor Shank.
This is just I don't even know if it's even possible, but I know there's a lot of abuse in our public parks and everywhere where there's a public, garbage bin, where you have somebody, might wants to go ahead and then they put their full bag in. Is there any way of decreasing the opening that they can't put a full bag of garbage in? So there's so many places where you see somebody might stop and then they just go ahead and take their household garbage and then they put it in the park's garbage in, and then it's full. You know what I mean? How can we solve that's just a smaller opening on the top, or it's a problem that we're going to have to address because it's getting worse and worse and worse.
I believe it's something, and Brant may be able to add to this as it's falls in his category, but I believe a lot of our bins have in the community areas or downtown areas have changed, and they do have smaller openings, and I think that's probably something that's considered as they need replacement.
Is there anything else with respect to these recommendations? Seeing none, I don't have anything further on that, Christy. I think at this point, we're down to the summary. Is there anything that council wants to have any discussions with before we move on through the meeting? Is there something that we may have missed, or is there ideas that we may not have addressed? I'll open up to the floor and just see if there's anything out there. I'm just going to look for an update, and I know you probably haven't got it, but I'll ask anyways. But is there anything else council wants to speak about? Go ahead, Councilor Hicks.
Just one further thing, Christy. When I see partnerships with local schools and community groups, is there any plan to go into the schools with like town staff and explain the numbers and, you know, like you guys are inheriting the earth or what's left of it when we're done? Is that, or is there kits provided from the province? Like what can we utilize? And I'm going to circle back to the website as part of that, because we need to make the website easier, and I'm not going to make eye contact with Bran on this because I know they're working on it, but definitely needs to be a priority. Thanks.
Yes, and to speak to the local schools, I mean, anything's on, like we're open to anything. We have done that in the past if we've been asked by different grades, approach different things for different reasons, obviously. And we have gone in and spoke about garbage or recycling or waste diversion, even water treatment. Definitely it's an option for sure.
Councilor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship. Through you, Christy. You mentioned something that hit home, or it made me start to think about those countertop organics machines, if that's really organic or if it's just dehydrated, right? So maybe really think about that. And then because yeah, we don't know, do we? And or do we just take their word for it? Now I do know that's where we've gone for our conferences and stuff. They do actually have a sample of the product there, but how do we know? So I was just wondering if it would be something that we could do a trial run on, maybe get a half a dozen residents or something, get a hold of a company, not necessarily that one that I'm talking about, but get a hold of it and do our own trials and have our own data on that. It might be something for us to look at too. Thanks.
We could, and I guess this is up to council, but what we could do is provide some costing on what that would look like at budget time, operating budget time, if council so wishes to see something like that. Basically a small pilot program or something.
Yep. Thanks, Councilor Martin.
Not really a question for Christy, but I just want to make a couple of mentions. With the Waste Free Ontario Act, when the province hopefully eliminates our total cost for Blue Box program, we're going to want to get as much recyclables out of garbage and get it into recyclables, because the recyclables aren't going to cost us anything. And might as well address the elephant in the room. Everybody knows I'm not a fan of the levy on taxes for bag tags. And to me, it's not helping our waste diversion whatsoever. In fact, it's a disincentive to people. And I just want to bring up that fact that recyclables are going to be zero or very, very cheap for the municipality to deal with. We want to get those out of waste, so our waste is less. Our cost of recyclable is going to be down, and our waste should be down if we get those recyclables out of waste. People who are composting, recycling like crazy, trying to reduce their costs, we're not being very friendly towards those people. We're forcing them to buy a bag tag where they might have only needed a bag tag once a month. Now we're forcing them to buy one once a week with this tax levy. So I'm concerned. And if you look at July, August, September's waste gone, they went up every month. When did we bring the levy in July? Now we've got to track it to get a better tracking on this, but I'm concerned that our recyclables are going to go down and our garbage waste is going to go up simply because of the policy we've got in place. And it's not a popular policy. And when people rebel against the policy, the system just does not work. So I just want to throw that out there. And I'm sure we'll get into it more in budget time. And this is just a day for suggestions, but and Christie's done a marvelous job here tonight. And Mayor, if I could just have one more minute on something else.
Yep, go ahead, Councillor Martin.
Thank you. The Waste Diversion Committee consists of Amy McEwen, Christy Kelly, Peter Dafel, Steve Creighton, Graham Hay, George Lakins, Scott Woodland. And I just want to thank each and every one of them for their contribution to the report. Christy's done a marvelous job of pulling together all of our suggestions and all of our meetings. Basically, it's almost like an autobiography, so to speak, of all the committee work that's been done. So Christy, good work on that report. And I just want to thank everybody for that.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Martin. And Councillor Martin sort of touched on where I was going with it. Is there any kind of any update with respect to the Clean and Waste Ontario Act with respect to how they're going to deal with the downloading of the costs onto the producer? I think I suspect I know how it's going to be done, but is there any update you can give to us? And I know that I don't want to put you on the spot, Christy, but just if there's something you can sort of relate to the public.
I think it's something that we should bring forward maybe into the new year once we have a better handle of what's going on. The first municipalities have now transitioned. So the first few of them that were in that obviously round one, we're going to get a better idea of how things are going to look, and hopefully there'll be some changes and some benefits from them going first. But yeah, it's there's a lot of information. It's hard to keep up to date on, and to be honest, I'm not clear on how it's going to look yet.
Yeah, and sometimes I wonder if the people that are rolling it out are clear on how it's going to work either. So, but and I apologize, it's probably not a fair question, but I just thought if there was some kind of an update. I guess the only other thing, and it's a little bit completely outside the box, is there any thought or was there any talk or conversation with respect to lobbying our provincial and federal partners? It would sort of make sense to me that if we can reduce the amount of marketing with the products that are out there, it should reduce the amount of recycling, it should reduce the amount of garbage. And so it's easy to reduce if it just doesn't exist. And I know that each and every one of us have gone into any kind of a retail store and saw something that's as big around as a golf ball in a package that's takes two hands to carry out. So again, I know we're swimming uphill on that, but maybe that's something we should look at as well. Is that, and I know we're battling with the marketing world that if you put it in a bigger package, you got a better chance of selling it. But it does create some awful challenges for municipalities like us to deal with the waste and the recycling. So.
I would agree. I do think there's been some changes as of recent with single-use plastics and such. So we have been seeing, as consumers, seeing a bit of a change there. But I think we do have a ways to go, and definitely something to consider for sure. Thank you.
No, I appreciate that. Thanks. Is there anything else before we move on to the next portion of our meeting? Go ahead, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, just one thing I wanted to mention, and I know we're not going to deal with it here tonight, but the Waste Diversion Committee, the mandate ends 2023, the end of this year. And I'm just thinking council might want to consider very soon in possibly extending it another year or to the end of the term of this council, because with the Blue Box program coming up and garbage, I think fast becoming our number 3 expense maybe in the community, we need a Waste Diversion Committee to deal with these ongoing things. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, good point, Councillor Martin. I'm sure that staff is listening to it, and sometime between now and the end of the year, they'll probably provide us with a report with sort of an overview as to how the committee has unfolded, or how the committee has provided the information, whether we need to continue on with it. I'm going to guess there. So Is there anything else? If not, we'll look for a motion. I think we've given staff a pretty good overview as to our thoughts with respect to the recommendation from the Waste Diversion Committee. I'm hoping that we've given you some direction. And so what I'd be looking for is a motion to note and receive the report that Christie has provided with us tonight. Moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Councillor Pennell. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed, motion's carried. Thanks, Christie, and I hope we didn't beat you up with too many questions. Next on our agenda tonight are deputations and written comments, and first up would be Jeff Chestnut, and I believe Jeff has a PowerPoint presentation. Come on up, Jeff. I know you've been here before and you know the routine, so settle in, and the floor will be yours when you get settled in. Yeah, whenever, yeah, I think the microphone's on. Just we'll get you to, yeah. You may have to pull it up close to when you're speaking, but I see the lights on, so. There we go. Yep. Okay. Yep. Just, and if you can speak into the mic, just so the folks at home can hear your presentation. Thank you.
Just before I get going, when I was going door to door, there are some people in the community already with the drying unit. I got pulled in and shown an example. It's about $500 for an apartment unit. So that to go along with what you were talking about. Councillor Pennell. Good evening, Your Worship, fellow councillors and Napanee staff. I thought I would maybe put my reading glasses on so I don't get lost here. I would refresh my proposed change to the garbage bag tag bylaw before the upcoming budget meeting or at this meeting tonight. I would be redundant to review the growing garbage costs and issues in Greater Napanee region as we've gone through them. The Ontario government predicts, I guess, let's get to the, which button do I hit again? Just that one? The down arrow? Right. The Ontario government predicts, given the projected population growth, it is forecasted that Ontario will need 16 new or expanded landfills by 2050. I'd also point out that the Ontario government was way off on its prediction of population growth, and the federal government gave us quite a few more people. Jessica Madrid of the Canadian National Observer states in her article dated February 14th, 2022, that by 2030, 80% of landfills will be mandated closed. The City of Ottawa, a municipality that dealt with its own garbage for its eternity, is now looking towards private landfills by 2026, according to the CTV news special on May 23rd, 2023, titled "The Burning Garbage Debate for City Council." The Auditor General Report of Ontario dated November 22nd, 2021 reports that all landfills will be exhausted 11 to 14 years. So our province disagrees with how much space we have in our landfills. The Auditor General found that steps the ministry has taken today will not significantly improve waste diversion from businesses and institute, and Ontario's overall diversion rate will suffer unless corrected. The ministry's plan to divert half of all waste generated by residents and business sectors by 2030 and 80% by 2050. Growing demand for private landfills means that the supply is quickly shrinking. Greater Napanee is moving towards a negotiation with waste management that in a very restricted manner because of this. I will argue that if near all municipalities in Ontario have adopted a garbage bag tag system and none have reduced waste, it's considered a failing system and that we need to abandon it. In Thursday, August 3rd, 2023 edition of the Napanee Beaver, an individual paid for a letter to be published with the express bitterness of the new tag system. I believe I have it here somewhere. Oh, that would be it. In the green bordered. It expressed bitterness and anger regarding the new garbage bag tag system, claiming a refusal to recycle and to throw away any progress to diverting waste to the wind. I just point out that this is leaving a bad taste in people's mouths, and I would agree with Councillor Martin that they're fighting against our garbage system now because of the negative feeling. I propose the elimination of bag tags, phasing out of printing them and distributing them altogether. This alone should eliminate cost and bureaucracy such as the needing to register mail in order to ensure people receive their bag tags, which seems to be an issue in the last sending out of the tags to people. You wouldn't send $100 in the mail without a money order, and the federal government is not going to ensure those bag tags being sent out in regular mail. The new bylaw will allow a 2-bag pickup system or a garbage pail system, which has Waste Management has a lift system, which gets you past weight issues for a single residential dwelling unit. So with this plan, I believe it will reduce waste because you're cutting 1 bag out. Right now, we're allowed 3. I say go without the tags and you have two bags without tags. Now, I know you were saying about you're asking someone who makes minimum wage right now to make sure that someone hasn't ripped the tag in half. And like you mentioned, Councillor Pinnell, there's multi-residential units. What do you do when your neighbor puts out too many bags? And all of a sudden you have Waste Management's pickup system sitting there counting bags and counting units. So I just don't think that if it had no tags, every house has 2-bag pickup. The money collected off the property tax for the tags, I would still continue to suggest collecting. And if it has to be an upward slope scale and you are planning on increasing it every year, I would pull the Band-Aid off and just do 1 increase for the next 4 years. Let the people handle it right now and come up with a plan. This new bylaw would allow the two bags or a garbage pail for a single resident dwelling. Further reducing one. So after the 2 bags, people could purchase bags for excess garbage. If excess garbage has happened that week or missed a week of garbage. The bag would be translucent orange or yellow, so it's easily identified, and it would cost about $6.50 per bag. This is to ensure garbage gets to the dump, which I think we all really, when we talk about diversion, sometimes it prevents garbage from getting to the dump, and I don't think that's the goal that we want with waste diversion. That would leave no excuses for garbage abandonment, nor excuses regarding later bylaws that levy municipal fines and punishment. With excess money raised, because you would be pulling in excess money on the property tax, with the excess money, immediately you would commit to a new committee that would be looking for a forward solution, incineration or landfill, because it's a dirty problem, but every community's got to look into this, or we're all going to be cutting each other's throats trying to sell garbage to the last few landfills that are left. A change in behavior and attitude towards garbage is needed. My second proposal would be to adopt a primary youth program that they had talked about in waste diversion in the last council. I'd use colored pictures. So here's your news releases from your Ontario. There's your slope for your landfills filling up, put out by the Ontario government. And you're talking about the new lids. Well, as you see, there's recycling in that bag stuffed into a downtown garbage. I would point out, we have multiple fast food companies in town. And if you go in, their garbage is separated. and we all give them bonuses and that. And if you would watch, a bunch of them take the garbage and put it into one dumpster in the back. Now our town that's trying to divert garbage has one garbage pail. And we don't have any recycling or any way to separate garbage and promote separation of garbage within town. And as you see, there's where your recycling's going. I'd also point out, you saw that recycling is going down and garbage is going up. I would point out still that we haven't changed our webpage. And if you contact Waste Management, any recycling put into a single plastic bag is thrown into garbage because it jams up their machine and they just don't accept it. It goes over to garbage. And if you contact them outside this area, that's what they will tell you. And that's probably what's happening to all those bags of recycling that people have separated. They're going into garbage. With the excess monies from property tax collection, the new monies collected would be aimed towards a new committee. Okay, a change of behavior is needed, and the colored program, where is that? Here's your province's setup right here with your colored program that you could just order in and bring it into the school systems. Composting is a huge one. There is areas in Brantford, they have a collection site and they do sell compost back out and make money from it. I'd also point out that Deserano has a truck that shreds the leaves right on site, and the people can decide to leave their compost there in their gardens or they take it away. But they have a truck that comes and vacuums. They don't even bag it. They just put it in piles. It vacuums it up, it shreds it, and they can decide right there if they want to keep it or pass it to their town. The new garbage policy. So I would bring that into the schools, and I would point out the new garbage policy in town that I would adopt would be right to the primary grades. And the motto would be, don't understand Napanee's garbage policy, ask a third grader. And I believe if you don't understand our garbage policy by grade 3, you're not going to sell it to people. Like, to think people are going to transport recycling and garbage and that, they're just not going to do it. I do have a third incentive, and that is to speak on the five bag limitation for commercial buildings. Is a multi-unit building considered a commercial building? The definition in bylaw 614 needs to be clarified, especially considering the number of homes in Greater Napanee that have been converted into multi-residential dwellings. This backs up the finding by Ontario auditor I referred to earlier in this presentation, which states that 98% of diversion is not happening in commercial or industry levels. So if you go here with this slide, if you look at the math, Toronto's already done an audit for us in what's in our garbage. And so as you see, the green and blue lines could be removed. And if you can take two approaches. If you look at incineration, you can take the American version, which you don't worry about anything and you burn it all, and your machinery breaks down very quickly and you make everyone sick. Or you can take the German solution, and they looked at islands, an island premise, and they remove all that waste and only are burning less than 30% of their garbage in Germany. I would use pictures as well as words and coloring on our garbage. There's an example of your color and your words. I'd also point out in our community, like the reduce waste. I don't know about you guys, but that goes into garbage every week. And this is because we're too lazy to pick up our phone and look at it. This is single-use plastic every week, right? And so if the person doesn't take it out, and even if they do, it's colored paper. You could ban this easily and probably greatly reduce the weight going to the dump. To do signs and that, we could go to the high school and go back to old 1800 premises and create stenciling for our new garbage pails that would separate garbage. It doesn't have to be a net expensive process, is kind of my point. If we reach out to local businesses, like we keep looking at waste management, is there a local business and the farming community that could work together to come up with a composting solution? We talked third Tuesday night, you were talking about business incentives. Why don't we call out for composting and different businesses in our garbage issue to see if they would jump onto the opportunity of taking that business opportunity to set up in Napanee? And that's pretty much my idea.
No, thank you, Jeff. Does anybody on council have any questions for Jeff with respect to his presentation? Go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
Through you, your worship. Jeff, I don't know if this is directly to you or if I'm going to include Christie in the question. So pails are better than bags.
Well,
Because it
see,
redu-
I'm not too sure what happened with our last negotiation. I think our council kind of got like bamboozled by Waste Management because if you go read if you really want to know where Waste Management stands, go read their investment writings and they'll tell you how much on the hook we are. They are boasting to their investors how much money they are going to make in the future. So in the process, we remember they are a delivery system. They don't take care of our garbage. And so even though we passed it on to something like McDonald's and that, they're still filling up landfills, right? So I would say a pail system's greater, and this is why I would say a pail system. When we look at passing the cost to renters, you're looking at dealing with so many individuals. It's easier to deal with the landowner and the landowner deal with the renters. And the responsibility of the garbage and the landowner should be one. And we as a town should be dealing with the landowner. I don't think it's wise to get into it with every resident. And I think there are some apartments here that are not really taking their responsibility seriously, that they're using the tag system and there's apartments filling up with garbage, and that's preventing other apartments from being rented because of the stench and the rodent issue.
So to Christie, thanks, Jeff. To Christie, what is the cost associated with having a recycle pail, eliminating the clear bags, which I still see on County Road 9, and garbage? So I just take my kitchen garbage and collect it in the pail, take the pail to the end of the driveway. Nobody has to get out of the truck and lift it. It's positioned, it goes in, they set the pail down. They're also less likely to blow all over the road because they're heavier.
Through your worships. I don't know exact costs offhand. The bin system was proposed at the time the RFP was explored. It was staff's preference to go that route. There were concerns more primarily, I believe, in our rural area with how that would work. But just to clarify, as far as the recycling goes in bags currently, that is accepted in with our current collections. We've had conversation with Waste Management. It does bind up their machines. It is a health and safety concern. It's something that, long-term they would probably like to get away from, but it is accepted in our community at this time, and the materials are still going to further be processed for recycling.
I would ask, has anyone gone to witness that? Like, has anyone vetted where our garbage goes, or do we just accept what's said?
Yeah,
Because
okay.
I called.
Just
I
hold
called
on, Jeff.
outside
Yep.
area.
You asked a
Yeah,
question.
yeah,
We'll
sorry,
answer your
sorry. Yeah,
question.
yeah,
So,
you're right.
Councillor Hicks.
So I believe that everything from Napanee is going north of Cornwall, which just, wow, no wonder it costs so much to truck everything. The other thing is, I know that if I recycle and that peanut butter container isn't completely clean and everything else is good, the whole thing. And I honestly don't know who sorts that. Is it Is it artificial intelligence that scans everything and sends out an alarm when there's a dirty peanut butter jar or mayonnaise jar? Like, I've actually had these questions that I've asked of myself. How is this actually done? Will Waste Management allow us to tour the site where our garbage goes?
I don't know, and I don't know if Chrissy can answer that.
I can answer that. I don't know about the garbage because it goes direct to landfill, but to the recycling centers, they have offered for tours. So we can definitely arrange that if that's something council would be interested in.
Yep, great, thanks, thanks. Is there anything else for Jeff? I know we kind of went over our 5 minutes here, Jeff, but I wanted to make sure I got to the end of the presentation. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Calver.
Well, actually, it's not really a question as per se for Jeff. It's might be for Brant, or it might be for Christie. If we just said we're no more bag tags, we're just going to give free garbage to everybody, what would that look like as a tax increase per resident? I know we've covered it before, and you may or may not have that information here tonight, but we just throw away the bag tags, throw away everything. We're just gonna crack it on people's taxes. What would that look like?
I can't answer exactly what that would look like financially. I think that would really hinder our waste diversion goals and targets through obviously looking long-term. But I think similar to Councillor Shank's question earlier, we can certainly provide information at budget time. Again, I'm speaking for the Deputy Treasurer, but I believe at the operating budget time, we could probably provide some information of what it would look like based on current rates if the whole cost of garbage collection was incorporated into municipal taxes without a special tax levy, for sure.
Yep,
Thank you.
thanks, Christy. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Calver. Are you done? Okay. Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship. You might remember when something hit me and I said I got to be very careful about what I say. Well, it's been brought up. So if we were to get rid of the bag tags and take that cost, which is in the millions, take that and divide that up and put that on everybody's taxes, it would have to be in the form of a levy of a certain amount. Because if it goes into the mill rate on the same, excuse me, on the same road, you might have a house that's assessed by impact of $250,000 times their mill rate will give you their taxes. If the house right next door to it, very next door, is assessed at $500,000 times the mill rate, they're paying more monies. So we'd have to be very, very careful if we were to add that into the mill rate. So it would have to be added as some kind of a set fee levy.
Thanks, and I know we're getting a little bit away from the deputation, but
That's
thanks,
okay.
folks. Yep. Is there anything else? Is there anything else for Jeff before we get him over the hot seat? Go ahead, Councillor Shank.
This is for Christie also, but as you major on your slide here, so the best way to kill this tonnage issue is 41% in a household is organics. So that's where you're going to have to put all your effort in, is the organic program. We have, you take almost 50% of your, we organic. When my wife goes ahead, she has a little cardboard box, and you cut a head of lettuce or this or that or whatever it is, that goes in that box. When I'm going out, that goes in the manure pile, but not everybody in town has that. But all I'm saying is there was an individual in the Dobblestown, which I'll tell you later, I didn't want to mention their name, but had a little container. If everybody would do their organics and do it correctly, that's 50% of the weight automatically. Down in, we have a rural, where I live is of course 30 kilometers away. We have a senior, quite a large senior thing. When I was driving along on a Tuesday and you take a look at how many people put in out bags, most of us are grandparents like myself, that my wife and I, maybe a half a bag every other week. All right. And I wanted to see what the difference was. So I can't remember the exact day, but I drove around in some of the newer parts of the town where there was, younger families that would more apt to live. And there was a bag, definitely a full bag on some households. And then most of them were a full bag to almost 2 bags. All right. But there wasn't a lot of 2-bag households, but you could see where the younger family were producing with kids and everything else. They would have more garbage, you know? So all I'm saying is, do you have any, Christy, do you have any idea what the average household, besides tonnage, do they put out a bag, bag and a half, or, you know, when you collect from 7,000, whatever it is, households, how many, do they do an average of 1 bag or at less than a half a bag, or just something in the future that's, you can answer at a later date? I don't want to belabor it, but there you go.
We will look into that.
Yep, thanks. Is there anything else with respect to Jeff's presentation? Deputy Mayor Calver.
I think looking at everything, I think we really need to focus as well on education, re-educating people. And we're seeing numbers, how things can be reduced and cut back. And I think education is a huge factor.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Calver. Councillor Hicks.
I promise this is the last one, Your Worship.
We've got all night. Go
So,
ahead.
Jeff, I've never lived in an apartment building. I know that, I think it's 5 units and less. Correct me if I'm wrong. 5 units and less is considered residential. Is that right? Christy? Do you know?
There's a difference between when we're speaking of waste and actually like the building and planning department. So for us, I believe it's 5, yes.
So if it's considered residential, but then you have, and I shudder to think of some of the things, we've
Yeah.
talked about this
Yeah.
before, where garbage is just collected in the apartment.
Yeah.
What would make it easier for both the landlord and the renter to dispose of the waste? If we had the mechanical lift system, would that help?
The mechanical lift system, I think we really should look at, because a problem in town that I think we can overlook quickly are diapers and cat litter. Both very weighty things, and they go into bags and then they get missed because the guy can't pick them up. They don't hit the right weight. They get tagged and we don't know where it goes right now. So I honestly, I think the pail system with the lift truck is the future we should be going to. And diverting recycling is really in our interest. It really should be. When I was living in Markham, we used to have our garbage chute, and there were 3 different chutes for organic recycling and garbage type thing. And everyone pretty much complied to it.
Can I suggest that we revisit, Christy, the pail system? I don't know what's in the contract, and I know it's in place until 2030, but is this something that can we relook at?
It would require completely different equipment for our contractor, but it's something we can consider or look at the contract and see for sure. It's something we can explore. I don't know long-term or how long out we would.
It sounds
Look
like
at
you
that.
got to give them about a 3 to 5 year notice.
And we don't want to restrict, if we're going out to an RFP, we don't want to restrict some providers, because it may restrict some providers that don't have that specific equipment. So I think that may cause a problem too, but
May I ask then, just to follow up, we should not be limited by what the suppliers have. If we specifically want to use a mechanical lift system and that's what we do an RFP for, then I'm sorry, Joe Schmo and company, that you don't have that equipment and that it's eliminated you from the running. The ones that have it are the ones that quote.
and of course, we have to consider dollars and cents. So do we want to go down the road of saying your garbage is now going to cost you $250 a year in order to have a lift system? But again, without going out to an RFP, and I see Andrews wants to weigh in on that, so.
Hi there, through your worship. I know this is Christie's presentation about a committee, and Christie's done a great job, and she's seen solid waste through for the town for many years. I had the privilege in 2019 when Christy was off on a maternity leave to look at our solid waste. And I'm slowly taking over a bit of that portfolio, daily operations and whatnot. In 2019, I was the one that brought the RFPs forward, and I'm probably the internal push forward for the automated system. The automated system has many benefits, but as we discussed in 2019, there's some issues with rural properties we have in condo corporations where there's no place to put the bin, like on Winchester Drive and things of that nature. The positives are that when we move to an organics program, those trucks can also pick up the organic waste. The recycling bonus is that the recycling is all one stream, so we're able to put all our different recycling into one machine and it gets sorted at the facility. Waste management and passing has mentioned that a lot of their communities are going that way. It's a health and safety thing for them. As Jeff alluded to, we removed that 40-pound weight limit, which is the diapers and the cat litter is the issue. So we have discussed it internally. Christie's aware of it and we've talked about it and batted around. You're not far off that we would be a few years in getting towards having those vehicles and trucks in town that can service it. However, in speaking with Waste Management, finding the trucks that aren't automated now have become a bit of an issue for them. And so the issue in the length of our contract, partially for Waste Management, is around the mortgaging of those vehicles. And so a former CAO wanted us to negotiate a 5-year if we could, or we brought that to Waste Management. They wouldn't do it because of the price of those vehicles. So there's hurdles with everything, as Christie's alluded to, but the automated system, in my opinion, is something that we should look into in the future.
Thanks, Andrew.
So one further question, Your Honor. Can we split it? Can we treat rural and urban differently?
I don't want to say it's off the table, but I think it would be very difficult given that we have a provider, they would have fleet for a certain area. They would be required to have 2 types of vehicles for different runs and that sort of thing, but it's maybe something we could look into.
So I'm just going to throw this out here. I think we need to look at everything and nothing should be discounted. Because your upfront cost, if it did go to $250 a year this year, but there's not going to be an increase for 3 years because you've made that switch. And I think the education has to start as soon as possible on this, on what needs to be done to get us there. I think we basically need to go out and scare the garbage out of people about what we're dealing with.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Shank.
You can educate people. Now, maybe I'm just a bitter old man, but you can educate the people all you want, but if they're not going to buy into it, you know what? You have people that go ahead, and I know I live in the beautiful South, but you go along the route that goes down County Road 8 and all the way down there, and there's garbage flying everywhere. You know what I mean? If we have problems with people dumping their garbage, like you even had in the picture of downtown recycling.
You know what I'm about, and I appreciate.
You can preach all you want, but unless people have it, and when you have a fine that you go ahead, and we discussed that the other night at a council meeting, it's not just in and out. Unless you nail those people, all right, and provide a certain fine, you know, people will be dirty, and the people will be clean, and the dirty ones, you know what I mean? There's very easily, but it drives me nuts along Highway 33. I picked up 22 bags of garbage, all right, and along Highway 33. So because it's a rural area and there's no houses, then all of a sudden everybody starts chucking stuff, all right? And that's coming from the city and everywhere else. So that's an attitude of just plain laziness. And so unless you can provide a fine, because telling somebody not to do it, they're driving a vehicle, they're not kids anymore. I mean, they've already learned their bad habits. So unless you can nail them in the pocketbook to straighten them out, you can preach all you want. It's not going to happen. And you, being a retired police officer, know that.
Very much so. Very much so. If there's nothing else, I'd like to move on to our next presentation. I know we got well outside our 5 minutes, but
Thank you for
the
your
night
time.
is still young. Thank you, Jeff. We're going to do a resolution or a motion at the end of the deputations. Okay. Thanks, Madam Clerk. Next up would be Sean Lucas, who has a deputation as well. So come on up, Sean.
Thank you, Your Worship. How much time do I have?
Well, you've got 5 minutes, but as you can see, you can probably engage us to stretch it a little bit more. So,
Well, I want to respect your time. Thank you very much, but I do have some pointed comments if you don't mind.
no, very much. You've got the
for-
floor, Sean. Go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, I think it's great that we have a game plan again for waste management. So I'd like to commend the directors and the council for getting that done. I don't agree with everything they put on it, but you need a floor plan to get going. And I want to address the elephant in the room first before I surmise my comments on the report in general, and that's the bag tag levy. Many people have been taxed without representation. This is what I feel. This is what other people feel. They've been charged a flat rate for a user fee program. We had a 2.8% municipal tax increase, yet in fact is much higher for many people with a residential assessment. Many residential property taxpayers with municipal assessment have a municipal assessment with as low as $300 or less. So what that means is for your properties that have been tagged with the bag tag, if you're a $300 municipal assessment, you actually experience a 37.5% tax increase. Personally, I have $1,000 worth of bag tags sitting on my desk. I can't use. My tenants pay for their garbage. I have my own commercial bin and I pay for my own commercial. I don't feel that's appropriate for me, nor do I feel appropriate with a lot of people I've talked to. I made a comment last year. The gentleman before me, Jeff, made a comment about the newsletter in the paper. You have your own stats. From the time the bag tags went out, it's actually working in reverse. You're accumulating more bags to pick up and less recycling. And the people I talk to are saying, screw the recycling. We're going to stuff things in the bags. Last council, all due respect to those who are here, had a sliding scale from 2022 to 2028 of charging more money per bag tag every year. It doesn't work that way. If you sell 1,000 bag tags a year, you're not going to get $8,000 in year 8 and 1,000 year 1. We have a crisis. The province has a crisis. We've got to make the landfill diversion the primary goal of this municipality. And I think you're on the right path to start with. And we think we have to revisit, sorry to say this, but I think your garbage disposal needs to be put back in the general tax levy to be fair for everyone. And we got to crank up the work when it comes to land diversion. I was fortunate enough to be on the first land recycling committee in Napanee in 1988. Our diversion rates are the same as they were 35 years ago. The province hasn't moved. This province is a mess. I look internationally, Scandinavian countries bordering Europe are paying for garbage to come in to burn. We haven't done a job as a province. Packaging, by the way, someone made a comment earlier, that's a federal responsibility. So it starts at the top. So many comments here, the compactor at South Fred, sorry, Mayor, I actually think we should get it. Our landfill site at South Fred is invaluable. 40 years, we need to get 100 years out of that. And when you can compact the garbage from 100% to 20%, that is worth the investment. Composting, 50% of the weight in your garbage bags that go on the tipping fee that we now pay for is water or compostable material. Do a cost analysis. $375,000 for a composting program. Is that what I heard? It's not going to cost you that because you're going to reduce the weight of the garbage going into the tipping fees. And I'm going to make an admission right now. Previous councils have failed as a majority to deal with the tipping fee issue that we're now dealing with now. Many times I suggested that we create a reserve fund to levy the cushion for that. Last council had to deal with it, and now we're paying the big price for it now. 2030 garbage contract renewal, that's not too far away. So kudos to you for the Waste Management Committee. Don't end it, crank it up. We've got to get people to divert away from landfill. I don't want to go into the, well, 4 minutes, I'm doing good. Executive summary, I just want to make these comments. 80% diversion rate in over 27 years. That was a goal in 1998 that we were to achieve in the year 2000. We failed miserably, both at the provincial and federal levels. Provincial average is already 50%. We were 30% back in 1988. Again, looking forward, not behind. I think we can do much better. And we need to make this a top 3 priority in this community. I think Councillor Martin said it's now one of our top 3 expenses. It needs to be treated as a top 3 expense. We're in emergency crisis mode to get this done. Anyways, I have spoken to the councillor extensively about my concerns. I think the report as a whole is great. There are some specific things that I would probably disagree with, but the bag tag levy, you have to revisit this. This is not appropriate. And a lot of people are experiencing a much bigger tax increase at 2.8%. My tenants, I've got older people that might do half a bag in a month. And I got other tenants who are saying, I'm not recycling, throw it in the garbage bag. It's in your stats that you're seeing on your board tonight. 3 months, you're already seeing a significant shift between recycling and garbage bag usage. It's going to get worse. So whatever you projected last year compared to year to date, we're actually spending more money on garbage. This has to be addressed. This is my comment. General taxation, move quicker on your programs for waste diversion. And the province and the last thing I'd say to you is, being politically inclined, we have to lobby the province and the federal government, and we have to lobby our partners in this province to get them to move on their responsibilities. 1988, David Pearson got rid of the deposit bottle tax. The print media's contribution to the Ontario Stewardship Program was to give free advertising. We're paying for other people's waste, and we have to move off that. Anyways, 6 minutes. I'm going to cut it there because I know you've had a long night, and thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Sean. Does anybody have any questions for Sean or comments? Go ahead, Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Sean, can you just explain to me, you made a comment about how the bag tag isn't fair for all, but if we put the cost of the garbage into the general tax levy, that would now be fair for everybody. Could you explain to me how you think that would be fair for everybody, please?
Well, first of all, because of our bad contract we signed, and I'm not going to finger anyone on that, and previous councils, including myself as a whole, looked away from what we're going to deal with when the contract expired. I think someone with a $300 or less residential assessment paying a $100 fee, that's a 37% tax increase. They're paying the same rate as someone in $1 million house or a family of 4. So it's not a user fee basis being, charged as you use it. It's a flat rate. It isn't fair. I mean, I have tenants that, like I said, they recycle heartily. But since the bag tag came out, the word on the street is, why bother? And $100, I got $1,000 worth of bag tags sitting on my desk that I can't use. And sure, do your analysis. How many properties are paying what rate municipally? What, a $300 assessment? I just paid 35% this year of my municipal taxes.
Thank you, but you want to use the property that's assessed at $300. I'd really like to see that. If you're using that and you're saying that it's not fair for everybody, then let's take it the other way around. Whereas if we take the mill rate of that and times it by the $300, their taxes are very, very, very low. And my example earlier about a $250,000 home and a $500,000 home right beside each other, you're paying more. Those two houses are paying a different rate for that same bag of garbage. It could be the same weight, same size, same commodities inside. So how is that fair for all?
Up until last year, we didn't create a levy, and levies are very dangerous. It's like candy in a candy store. You go and stick your hand in one jar and you want to go into more jars. Your two neighbors with different price houses, one could be a senior citizen, empty nester. The other one could be a new family coming to Napanee. He's got 5 kids. The levy system is a dangerous process to go to because you're going to have inaccuracies with a lot of situations. We were doing okay up until this year, and we introduced the bag levy. And by the way, that was only for half a year. If you go to a full assessment, my $1,000 bill will now be a $2,000 bill for a single service that I don't even use.
Thanks, Sean. I don't have kids in public school either, so I'd like to pay for that. So is there any other questions for anybody here this evening? Go ahead, Councillor Shank.
I don't want to get into a debate or anything else, and everybody has an opinion, and everybody's opinion has to be respected. When you, there's a fixed cost for the, I think it was I don't have the exact numbers on it, but I think it was $127 or $130 per household just for them to drive by your door, whether you pick up, you do put out the garbage or not. So when if you look at, I know what I pay in taxes, which is quite substantial, but the point is what that cost increase would be if you put it on a general taxation and what that cost would be per resident. All right. And what the average is, I don't want to get into a big debate, but the point is there's pros and cons to everything. You're into the renting business. All right, for the amount of, because we're saying how many bag tags you have, so therefore for the amount of residential units you must have is quite substantial. So the point is there's pros and cons to everything, and this will be discussed, you know, at a later date when we have more information. But there's some things I agree with you, Sean, and some things I disagree. There's just, everybody has a different view.
Can I just respond?
Yep, go ahead, Sean.
Just had a discussion about Roblin tonight. Many people in the rural area don't use the truck to pick up their garbage. They take it to the landfill site. And I just heard from someone else tonight that it's very expensive to pick up garbage on the rural sector. I personally think you should close the Roblin dump to garbage disposal because we're driving by that person's house anyways. The other thing I'd like you to look into, I know, Michael, you're Councillor Schenk, you're very good at numbers. Take a look at what was projected this year to what you end up with at the end of the year in terms of the tipping fees. The last 3 months have gone opposite to what you expected. In 1988, when we brought in Blue Box, Angela, you're in South Fred, we charged $2.50 for a bag tag. We got hell for that. But when I talk to people, say, listen, you're getting your bag tag, or you're getting your Blue Box for nothing. So if you recycle, you don't need to buy a bag tag. Somewhere we've lost that vision or that focus to go forward. So I respect your comment. I appreciate it. You're a numbers guy, and please wait till January. Look at the numbers that come in for the rest of the year.
Thanks, Sean. I think the fact we have to keep in mind is that the Blue Box isn't for nothing. There is a cost to picking up the recycling. So, and I think that cost is associated or regulated or comparable to the cost of the garbage. And I think the number you were looking for, Councillor Shank, was, and Christy can probably, I'm thinking it's in around the 67 to 70%. Don't take that to the bank, but I think it was around 2/3 of the cost of our garbage is to have the service. And so part of the problem is do we want the service, and how are we going to cut the cost in that service? And there was some suggestions tonight about how we can cut that cost. But if we cut the cost of that service, we're also cutting the cost, or we're cutting the service itself, which is if we have a truck drive by your house every 2 weeks, where's that garbage going to go? Because there are people that put out 2 bags of garbage a week. And so what are they going to do with that? Are they going to store it in the garage? Maybe they don't have the ability to store it in the garage. So as Councillor Shank says, there's a number of different pros and cons to each of these. But we just got to keep in mind that nothing is for free, and that the cost of the service is the bulk of having, or is the bulk cost of having that service. And recycling, and I know I grew up thinking that it was free, but it really isn't. There's a cost to collecting it. There's a cost of processing or getting rid of it. So is there anything else? Yep, go ahead, Councillor Shank.
We're in a service delivery business, and nothing is free in this world. We have a very difficult time just even picking up leaf rubbish. And rubbish that costs, and you know what I mean, with the spring cleanup or this, and there's pushback that, and people want to have more dates. Can you imagine going ahead and you're not gonna, I'm sorry, everybody in this municipality, you'll take your garbage to a transfer site. We can save 60% of the cost. All right, how that would fly when we can't even go ahead and pick up leaves at the correct date. So it's a service delivery that there's gonna be, only reason why I'm saying what I'm saying is just for everybody to ponder this on until we have the next meeting. Then they can say, hey, you know what can we do? What can't we do just to improve the situation? There we go, man.
And that's why we're here tonight, to have these conversations, to start the conversation, because we do have budgets coming up. So is there anything else? Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. I know you said we didn't want to get into a debate, but we have a little bit of, and I won't be long, but I like Sean's presentation tonight. And he's right. The tax levies is like, once you have your hand in that jar, what are we going to start charging a tax levy, specific tax levy for next? Are we going to start charging a levy for fire services? Are we going to start charging a tax levy for ambulance service? Taxation. As an individual, I can't afford a fire department myself, but when we all go together and pool our resources, we can have a fire department. And that's what taxes do. We can't put a specific levy on every single thing. And garbage is another one that we can't. That's just my opinion. And I just wanted to throw that out there. Thanks.
Yep. No, thanks, Councilor Martin. I don't think there's any suggestion this evening that we're going to introduce any more tax levies. And I'll look to Madam Clerk that I believe that the tax levy process is supported by the Municipal Act. Am I correct in saying that?
Through your worship, you are correct. This special levy is a process supported through the Municipal Act. That's not to say that a person couldn't start making a list of all of the things that certain properties have and certain types of properties don't have, and start creating a very granular tax levy bylaw on that basis.
Great, thanks, Madam Clerk. Go ahead, Councilor Hicks.
Through you, your worship. What I'm sensing is something was tried. It was not 100% success. And I think we as a council have to take that under advisement. And there's nothing wrong with changing your mind. As a woman, I'm very familiar with that concept. I change mine frequently. So you made reference earlier, Mr. Mayor, to schools. Mine are all done, but my grandchildren are coming up now. And I like to think that some of my taxes are going into an education system. Garbage, if it's spread out over the general tax base, perhaps that is the way that we need to be looking at to go. And I would ask that staff, and I know we need to do this through motion, but I would ask staff to provide a very detailed and very thorough analysis of what that would look like in order to meet the cost of the service of garbage.
Thank you, Councilor Hicks. Is there anything else? Seeing none, thanks, Sean.
Thank you for your time.
That completes the portion of our meeting this evening with respect to deputations or written comments, unless there's somebody that would like to have a comment with that hasn't been registered. Yep, come on up, John. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to give you as much time as everybody else, but I'm assuming that you have an opinion with respect to the garbage.
Listen to this, and you're not going to change it too much, because if you don't deliver with the manufacturers of making stuff that's not recyclable, or it's got no long lasting time to it. Like me and my wife been married for 43 years. I think for 30 years, 35 years, we still got the same washing machine and we still got the same dryer. Okay. Now we've had a a technician come and fix it a couple of times. And he said to me, keep these going as long as you can, because everything you buy today only lasts for about 5 years. And it's all technology, electronics, and it costs more to fix it than buying another one. So you got all that stuff going into landfills or something like that. And the other thing, when you're talking about compostables, okay, Newmarket, they have 1, 2, 3. They might have 4 different bins, and they have a gray box, and that's for the compostable, and they call it the wet stuff. It's all picked up in one truck at the same time. And when you're talking about Christmas trees, Loyalist always did that. We looked after the fire department. We'd have the biggest pile of trees there you've ever seen. You have a big party, everybody in the township could come. You talk about the environment. You got pretty near 200 volcanoes shooting the shit in the air that they don't want us to put up there, okay? And they're trying to blame it on our little old 2-inch pipe out of the car and bonfires and backyard fires and wood stoves and everything else. At one time, Trudeau wanted to do away with wood stoves. Well, that's not going to happen. There's a lot of things not going to happen. And you got the people that don't give a heck. And for instance, down Springside Park, we got 3 garbage cans down there. They're filled right every morning. I watch that guy dump them. They're pretty well filled up. And I down there one day today, somebody threw one of them, a dead old fish out in the parking lot, left it there. So I picked it up and I fired it in the river. Simply with all the other dead ones, okay? So it was in a garbage bag, so I had to throw that in. Somebody had thrown a whole pile of wire stuff in the garbage bag. You couldn't get anything else in the garbage. And turn around, you see out there, they go to Tim Hortons, they go McDonald's, they all show up down there. They sit in their cars. There's me and some other guy down there that normally picks it up if there's enough of it. But that's where I got into it 2 councils ago with Gord. He got mad at me because I said, why don't you use them cameras down there and get the license plate numbers of these people and start fining them? So that's all I got to say. My 3 minutes are up.
Yeah, no, you did a very good job. Thanks. And you did bring up a very good point that it pains me to think that we have people in our community that won't recycle just because they can stick it in a garbage bag. I mean, if that's the case, then what do they think of the environment? So it sort of pains me a little bit. But in any event, if there's nothing else, we'll look for a motion to note and receive the deputations that we heard tonight. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, second by Councillor Martin. There's no further comments, questions, or concerns. All in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Look for a bylaw to confirm the proceedings. Moved by Councillor Shank, second by Councillor Hicks. Read a first, second, and finally passes 26th day of October 2023. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Motion for adjournment. Moved by Councillor Martin, second by Deputy Mayor Calver. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thanks, folks. It was very educational and a good conversations here tonight. So thanks, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.